Rising sign or ascendant is considered to be one of the most important point in Vedic astrology. So much so that classical Vedic astrology texts say that ascendant is not just a point, but if you correctly see from the reference of ascendant, you can clearly see the blueprint of your entire life on which various aspects of your life are built upon. So in this quick video, we will see how to utilize the ascendant or rising sign and find out the basic blueprint of almost all areas of your life from this reference. So in a horoscope, your first house is called ascendant or the rising house, and this is the house which represents the 30 degrees of space on the eastern horizon at the time and place of your birth. So if you were born, or if anybody was born on a particular point on earth, at that time, if you look at the eastern sky and the 30 degrees of space on the eastern horizon, basically like how sun rises from east in the early morning, just like that, whatever sign was rising, so that sign as well as that particular degree is called as the rising degree, and that is what is called as Lagna in traditional Vedic astrology. And we'll see from this reference point how to analyze all the aspects of your life. And this can be further extended if we, instead of taking the rising sign, if we look at the exact degree, then it can be extended into divisional charts like D9, D10 and even up to D60s. So this concept is the most fundamental concept of analyzing any horoscope or understanding the dynamics of various aspects of your life with yourself. In this video, we will focus only on the rising sign. We will not tackle the details of divisional charts, and that we can take up in some other video though. So the ascendant in the horoscope, as we just said, it represents you. This is your horoscope. This whole thing is your chart, your astrological chart. But the main point which represents your character, your physical aspect and your personality in large part is this ascendant, and how you dynamically interact, say with your wife, with your husband, with your friends, with your children, with your spouse, with your brothers and sisters, with your business partners, or how they treat you. Those are defined by how the other houses in your horoscope and their energies interact with you. So let's take an example. Suppose your ascendant is Aries sign. In Aries is the sign whose lord is Mars. Mars, the fierce warrior, becomes a planet which represents you in this horoscope. Now suppose we want to see how is your behavior going to be with respect to, say, your enemies or your opposition. Now those things are signified by the 6th house. In an Aries ascendant horoscope, 6th house will fall in the sign of Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. So Mercury is going to be the planet which represents your enemies and opposition. But that's not it. This is where the details of Vedic astrology comes in. Also, we need to now see the Karaka planet of 6th house. Now, in case we are taking enemies and opposition, then Saturn is the Karaka of these significance. So Saturn will become Karaka, which shows, or planet which shows your enemies, opposition, obstacles you face. And now you see there are three-way relationship. What is the relationship between Mars, Mercury? What is the relationship between Mars and Saturn? And what is the relationship between Mercury and Saturn? In these three-way relationship are going to signify two very important aspects of the life. One, the relationship between the lord of that house and the karaka of that house is going to determine the strength of that area. In this case, it is going to determine your enemies and obstacles. And if in Vedic astrology, if you know, and I'm talking at a little higher level, but Mercury and Saturn are friendly planet. These two kind of get along pretty well with each other. So what this shows, it shows the inherent strength of your enemies and opposition in life. So Aries chart, just by this friendly relationship between Mercury and Saturn being significators of the 6th house, shows that your enemies and opponents are simply destined to trouble you. That is kind of put in the basic framework of the astrology of the Aries horoscope. Now, how are you going to deal with it? See, the relationship between Mars and Mercury is really anemic. Very, very anemic. And same is the case, almost same is the case with Mars and Saturn. Now here I'm not going into individual relationship, because if you go into details, you can say that Mercury consider Mars as a neutral, but Mars consider Mercury as enemy. I mean, that gives or that gets into a very different level of details. But for this discussion purpose, let's just say Mars-Mercury high-level relationship is anemic, and same is the relationship between Mars and Saturn. So what that shows, that though your enemies and oppositions are going to be strong because these two planets are friendly, but you are going to be fierce in dealing with them. There are many horoscope or many ascendants who are little bit more forgiving, but not the case with Aries ascendant. And that is like the basic blueprint of an Aries chart. Now if you see the actual position of these planets, Mercury, Saturn and Mars in your horoscope, suppose if all these three planets are placed 6 and 8 from each other, especially say Mars and Mercury are placed 6 or 8 from each other, as well as Mars and Saturn are placed 6, 8 from each other. And what I mean by that is, simply put, suppose Mars is here in the 1st house, Mercury is here in the 6th, and say Saturn is here in the 8th. Meaning Mars and Mercury is placed 6th house away from Mars, as well as Saturn is placed 8th house away from Mars. So the relationship, the house relationship between these two planets are 6 and 8. If that's the case, then what's going to happen is, it's going to further strengthen this basic blueprint of the horoscope, and it's going to make the relationship that much more difficult, or it's going to make you so much more fierce towards your enemies or opposition or competition. And that includes, competitive exams, your day-to-day work, your business affairs, in all those kind of areas. So you might have heard in terms of Vedic astrology how Karaka and House Lord, they determine various aspects of life, but this is how you actually put them together. Now likewise, we can see relationship with all the houses. So let's take an example of marriage life or spouse, which is represented by 7th house, and Venus is the lord of this house, because when Aries is the ascendant, 7th house falls in Libra sign, which is ruled by Venus. Now assuming that this is a male chart, then the Karaka of the spouse will also be Venus. So Venus both is the lord of 7th house as well as Karaka of the spouse or wife. And obviously relationship between Venus and Venus is very great. I mean, they are the same planet. And if you see relationship between Mars and Venus, according to traditional or classical Vedic astrology, Venus and Mars, they both consider each other as neutral planets. But they are the representative of primordial male and female energy. And now we can also take into consideration the fact that, which was actually applicable in the last example also, that Aries is the Mool Trikon sign of Mars and Libra is the Mool Trikon sign of Venus. That means they represent the energies of Mars and Venus to nearly a perfect degree. So the kind of passionate relationship which an Aries ascendant chart is inherently programmed to have is actually not available with any other ascendant. And in this case, if you now see, this is how we can blend the related areas with each other. If we blend in the 5th house, which typically shows your love life, and if I just consider, see, the Lord of the 5th house here, the sign is Leo, will be Sun. And Sun and Mars have mutually great relationship. So the love affair which Mars or Aries ascendant folks, especially, there is another ascendant of Scorpio which is ruled by Mars, but that has a very different flavor to it. But the love house also ruled by a fiery Sun with a great mutual relationship between Sun and Mars, plus the Karaka of love again being Venus, again shows that the kind, the depth, the passionate love relationship which an Aries seek is probably not available to anybody else. And again, as we saw in the last example, now if we just see how Mars, Sun and Venus are placed in the horoscope, if they are very well placed, meaning from each other, instead of 6-8 relationship, if the relationship is 1-5-9 kind of, then it further shows the positive aspect in terms of relationship. So likewise, we can look into all the houses and determine the basic blueprint of your life from ascendant itself. And I am planning to make 12 videos which will give details of each of the ascendant, Aries to Pisces, and see how their relationship with all of the 12 houses determine the basic blueprint of the experiences that each of the 12 ascendant are programmed to experience. So thank you guys. Please let me know your thoughts and comments, and check the link below for more details. I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.